Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now on with the show.
Welcome to the Newcastle Crew podcast, the Southgate Media Group podcast, dedicated to the struggling NBC show Constantine. I'm Lilith, and once again joining me is our fearless leader, Rob.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to call it struggling at this point. I'm going to say it's a show in flux.
Okay, Mr. Fancy Pants.
How's that?
All I know is the ratings are awful, and it needs to be on Sci-Fi, and I just literally saw a article by Zap to It that is suggesting the same. Everybody's getting on this new bandwagon now, and I like it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm going to say it's a show in flux, because I was reading throughout the week, there were articles that were popping up basically saying exactly that they are looking at Sci-Fi, that there's a chance, maybe something there. And frankly, I think that's a good thing. I think that, like I said, it's in flux. It's not that it's struggling. It's that it hasn't been.
It's been the redheaded stepchild. Let's just be real. Of the DC TVU, it is the redheaded stepchild all the way.
But at the same time, I think that there's a pulse. And watching it, as somebody who, the last episode I said I hadn't been really watching. I wasn't paying that close of attention. I've watched now episode 9, 10, 11. I love it. And I really can see the vision of it being a Sci-Fi or an Amazon or a Netflix show. It deserves it. And I don't say that about every one of these types of shows.
I never get my hopes up. I'll put it to you that way. But this show, I do. The fan base is so dedicated. NBC is just and they're just notoriously bad with social media just in general for their shows. They really stepped it up for Constantine. They were the ones, I believe, that actually started SaveConstantine.com. If I'm not mistaken, the actual network started it.
Oh, that, once again, I think that's a very encouraging thing.
I said it should have been on Sci-Fi to get going. We wouldn't be in this situation. It's making people nervous. Yeah, but our fan base is really dedicated, and I'm so proud of us, actually.
Well, just like Netflix has picked up those 4 Marvel shows, I think that this is a show that would be ripe for that. If Sci-Fi doesn't happen, I think that would be something. Although the thing that makes me nervous about that is Netflix is in bed with Disney, obviously. And why would they cross lines and do a DC show? But man, I wish they would.
Well, the thing about that is that the DC stuff is always trending on Netflix, Arrow, and as soon as The Flash comes, no doubt it's probably going to break the internet when the season 1 hits Netflix.
Well, and you know what? Gotham is going to do it too. I can't believe how many people bring up to me that they're like, are you watching Gotham? They watched a couple episodes, they really liked it. They're like, I can't wait to binge it on Netflix. It's like, wow, that is really affecting TV. Hopefully that doesn't mean shows that shouldn't be canceled are canceled. You know what I mean? Because people are excited about it and they want to watch it, but they're waiting.
This is the thing that's been grumbling since, I guess, since the invention of the DVR. Well, really the VHS. But you couldn't really track that. But they go, people are getting busier and busier and when they have more and more screens in their lives. And there's been this push to make every screen count and maybe not necessarily worry about the live viewership. And I think the CW has kind of capitalized on that very well.
Yeah, and I think your major networks aren't capitalizing on it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, and think about it. You take a show like this. They've obviously spent some money putting this together, building this world. It seems like a waste to have everything in place and pull the plug.
Yeah.
I can understand it when it's a terrible show and you just go, wow. we got to cut our losses here. But this is not a bad show. This is actually, I mean, man, these last 3 episodes I have thoroughly enjoyed.
I think it took too long to find their footing, though, is what it is. And so everybody's like, yeah, we'll just wait for Netflix, especially with the news over the holiday. So it's tough. But I think, honestly, what it is that I think it should have been on the CW. I definitely say it didn't have any business to be on NBC because it would have paired so well with Supernatural. It's crazy.
I agree. Yeah, it would have been a perfect fit.
Like, this episode reminded me so much of Supernatural. And I was just like, yep, mm-hmm. I was like in my head writing fanfic for a crossover.
You know what, though? To me, those CW shows, there's a CW quality about it that I think would hurt this show. I think this show would be better served being on like HBO or Showtime, you know, like with Penny Dreadful, what they've done with that. If Penny Dreadful was on the CW, you know, it's like it would have taken the teeth out of it, so to speak, and it would have been more like, oh, look, now we have this wacky little relationship thing.
But see, that's what I'm saying. Supernatural's not like that. That's the only show on the CW that is absolutely not like that. Like, even Arrow and The Flash have gone ridiculous with the relationship drama. So much in common with it, and they share the same source material, like I said last time that we spoke, that I just could totally see them teaming up.
I can too, and I think you're right.
So I don't know. I want so many good things for Constantine, and I just hope that either NBC decides to like kind of stick it out and kind of suck it up. Because, I mean, really, DC is about to rule TV come next season.
Oh, you think so?
Oh, I know so. Like, I'm not excited about, like, Supergirl at all.
Teen Titans is going to be cool, though.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's going to rule the roost. And to kind of not have a relationship with them, you know, you're going to be left out in the cold. And NBC needs all the help it can get, whether it's critical or just a dedicated fan base.
That's true.
So sometimes you have to, you know, you have to weigh the dollars and the cents.
Hey, I'm with you. I'm totally with you on this. And you know what? I think this is a property that they really can't give up on.
I'm going to tell you something. I really liked this episode on the third rewatch. I got 2 words for you. Chaz, backstory, make it 3. Finally, exclamation point, underline, bolded.
You know what? Okay, so I got a question for you before we get into it. Is this the episode? You said on the last episode that there was one that you weren't like. You're like, You liked it, but and you said, oh, you'll probably like it. Was this the one that you said that about, or is it the next one?
It was this one. Because I was excited for the Chaz backstory, but everything else about it was so rough around the edges. I was like, this should have been in the first 4 episodes.
Okay, good. I'm glad that's what you're saying. I'll tell you what, from my standpoint, as somebody who's written and somebody who's been around this quite a bit, I'll tell you where I thought it was a misstep. It kind of seemed like a movie that comes out that they rush and cut to get things together, and then you want to watch the director's cut later. Because there was stuff like jumping around that I'm usually great at following that stuff. It doesn't bother me. This, I was confused more than once going, wait a minute, is this now? Is this a flashback? And it seemed like they were quick cuts, which tells me they had more stuff on the plate. So I think that's where this one fell flat. But I can see why on a third viewing, it would be getting pretty good because you're starting to fill in those gaps mentally, because I watched it for the first time today. And even though I was a little bit lost, I could see kind of where that stuff was. And I really enjoyed it. And I actually, my first thought was, I think I'm going to watch this one again tonight or like in the next couple days, because I really do want to see what happens like as I get subsequent viewings.
But I think what it was for me is that I finally figured out what storyline it was.
Oh,
like,
okay.
I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm like going literally like on my computer going through the Hellblazer stuff. Like, okay, what? This is so familiar. This is so familiar. I finally figured it out because, you know, it's a TV adaptation, very loose.
Right.
I was like, oh. And so that's where it definitely was just like, but then because the thing that happens to Chaz actually doesn't happen in the comic books. So they were kind of mixing and matching.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, like I said, I don't know it well enough. I know threads. I've read a Hellblazer here and there.
Yeah, so I was just like, Quid Pro Quo was kind of this interesting. I'm like, okay, this is like the first Latin term we've had since the pilot, you know, known as asylum or whatever. And, you know, Quid Pro Quo is that Latin phrase that everybody kind of knows, and they go the general thing, oh, something for something. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. And I'm just like, okay, Felix Falls is in this. Okay, yeah, it's probably got something to do with him, sure enough. Would you care to read the synopsis for them?
I will. Boy, let me get ready. This is a long one. John, Zed, and Chaz race to save Chaz's daughter after her soul is taken by Felix Faust. I hope everyone stayed with me for that because, man, that was a long one we had to go through. Oh my gosh, it's Uncle Tio as Felix Faust.
Who?
You're not a Breaking Bad person?
No.
No! Lilith.
I love Bryan Cranston. I watched the pilot. I was like, this show's not for me.
That Felix Faust was played by Uncle Tio. Uncle Tio he's mute. All that he does, he sits there. He's horrible. He's this horrible, bad man. And the way he communicates is by dinging a little bell. It's amazing. It's a great character. And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh, it's Uncle Tio. I mean, what great casting. So you didn't appreciate it as much as I did because you're not a Breaking Bad fan. But I'm telling you, any Breaking Bad fans, and he really looks like Felix Faust.
Yeah, I thought it was a stroke of genius for casting. But a little bit about Felix Faust. He's a fictional supervillain who appears in stories by DC Comics. He first appeared in 1962. Of course, he was like the main adversary for the Justice League of America. Because Superman and Wonder Woman, really, they're only impervious to magic. Like, that's the only thing that affects them like the regular way. So it would make sense to have a guy like Felix Faust as one of those early, really hardcore main villains. And he makes he blends right into the world of Constantine, as they later kind of do during when they were rebuilding and making the new 52. So I like it. I like his character. It's interesting. I like the magical, mystical side of DC a lot.
Well, and he represents it so well. And I think that it added depth. I think that he's the type of character, forget the comic for a second, for the show, I think he's an important character that's definitely history between him and Constantine. Yeah, he's blown up, but you know what? It means nothing with this character. I love that. I love that whole thing with Chaz when he figured out that he absorbed, 47 souls? And so I get to die 47 times? And Constantine's like, yeah, that's kind of how it works. And I love how they did that. But then when his wife asked about it, is it painful? He's like, oh my gosh, it's incredibly painful. I thought it's really great. It made me watch Chaz differently.
And to think that it was only 2 years ago and he was down to 32 souls, that was the craziest part about it. I was just like,
yeah. How many of these things has he gone through?
And at the end of this episode, now it's we know the count. So it's 30. We're on Chaz watch now.
Yeah, right. We're going to have to keep tabs. Now, okay, here's a question. Are they going to, did they do that with Chaz in the comics?
Not at all. His wife hated him for completely different. He did ruin their family, but not like this. This was completely made up for the show. Everybody kept saying, okay, that's Chaz, obviously, but we don't remember this. And so I think that is actually something that they made for the show that actually I would like to see in the comic books.
Here's what I'm wondering. Are we going to get a Doctor Who moment where Chaz counts down and then at the last minute gets more souls?
Probably.
Or will we get to a point where they're going to just let this go on long enough and then eventually that's how we kill off Chaz? If this thing ran for 5 years, does Chaz die in year 4 because he's used up the other 32?
No, does Chaz die in the series finale as the ultimate sacrifice?
Yes. What do we have to talk about with this episode?
These were 2 totally new people that came out of nowhere, both for the writing and the directing. We had Brian Anthony and Mary Heron, who directed. And I was just I thought they did a really great job, and they did better than a lot of the earlier episodes. I like the cinematography of it. They kept it dark and gritty in most places. And they tried to keep it hopeful in the hospital with the little kid, obviously.
Well, and that's something that, I didn't know this was a new director. That was my complaint about it when it first started. It was way too lit. It didn't have the tone. And this definitely had the tone. They've been very consistent. The last episode, this episode, and the episode coming up, very consistent with the tone.
Yeah.
And I dig it. That's where it needs to be. That dark, just on the fringe of being, not really a procedural and weirdness going on. Yeah. So I thought she did a great job.
Yeah, definitely. I was really impressed. And like I said, this is just one guy This is the thing about the writer's room. I think maybe where it differs from a lot of the other comic book shows, maybe not Gotham, but specifically Arrow, Flash, where they have writing teams, and it kind of makes it easier to have, you know what I mean? You have that person
Yeah.
to bounce off. One person sets up the structure, the other person does the dialogue. Usually is how that works in a writing team. So I think maybe if we get a season 2, that's what we need. Because like while the tone and the story was great, the dialogue not so much.
Yeah, right. When it's one person doing it all, something can get lost in translation. It's rare to have that work, Frank Miller.
Yeah. And even then, it's questionable choices. Like somebody was like, maybe you might not want to do that with Superman. Maybe, just maybe.
Yeah, right. It's nice to have that other person is bringing it up. Yeah.
When we get season 2, I think that's a suggestion they might want to take into account. I think it will make it easier for everybody all around.
I agree.
I did love the way this episode opened. This is like one of the longest cold openings ever, by the way. Did you notice that?
Yeah, no kidding. I thought we were into the show. Like, I forgot we were in the opening.
It was creepy and spooky, and it sucked me right in, though.
Yeah, it was great. And that whole illusion of the White Snake concert where it got set on fire, like that whole thing was cool. And okay, once again, this is where it got a little weird. I wasn't sure when we were in a flashback and when we weren't. And seeing that part, I was like, are we in a flashback to what happens to Chaz? Because there was a line later where it seemed like, oh no, that wasn't a flashback, but then it was a flashback.
Yeah, they didn't differentiate the flashback color gradient very well. I don't know if it was to blur the lines, though, because we're like in Chaz's head and he's remembering and all this other stuff. I thought maybe that's what it was.
That could be. Or maybe if they had just done, if that was the case, maybe do a little wardrobe change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just something like he's got a red scarf on when it's in the background. You know what? But that works. It doesn't have to be super obvious. It just has to be something that in your brain it kind of triggers like, oh, this is a different scene. Because he was wearing the same thing and everything. And if he's not, he really needs to expand his wardrobe possibilities.
Yeah, well, that and our show's on a limited budget. So the wardrobe always comes last in a show like this. And plus, he's a really large man. He's over 6'6".
You look at this guy's wardrobe, though. I mean, there's a resale shop by us. They could go get a couple of shirts. I think they're like $1.60.
No, I totally agree.
I think they could do that, and he'd look normal.
But no, the thing about it is that really made me think that he belonged this belonged in like the supernatural world, because everybody dresses like a Winchester with the plaid and the jeans. I'm just like, oh, you guys need to be Winchester so bad.
I am so glad you said that. There was a scene where I actually started thinking about Supernatural, and I've only seen one episode, and I totally got a Winchester vibe off of the scene with Chaz.
Oh, we had some really good guest stars though, besides Uncle Tio, aka Mark Margolis. We had Roger Floyd as Fennel, and that's the name that kind of set me like, this is based on a storyline, because they wouldn't just throw this in. And oh, by the way, the storyline is I think it's All His Engines is the name of it. Yeah, he like when he like died, I was like, yeah, this is definitely a straight up scene out of the comic book, and that kid did a pretty good job for the little bit of time. I love the little girl Alexa Nessison.
Was that his daughter?
Geraldine.
Oh, she was really good. Very believable.
And then we had his wife, who looked like Katie Cassidy stand-in. Kind of freaked me out a little bit.
You know what? She looks exactly like somebody I went to school with.
Was her name Amanda Clayton?
Nope. I looked her up because it was that strong that I was like, do I actually know this person? Like, it was so weird. And we're talking, I mean, she'd be the right age, And I pulled it up and nope, not even close.
Yeah. So I didn't actually know where we were going. Like, we see this creepy guy, and it's smoke, and then we see it filter down to this little girl who's being weird with her dolly. He and Zed are talking about how it's Chaz's weekend. So John and Zed are talking about what happened and how he needs to tell her and how she can't run away from this. And, they casually throw, hey, Chaz is having a weekend with his daughters. I was like, oh, so we're not having a Chaz episode. Okay. Then we cut to him in the taxi, because you know how they do. Like, they literally can't have all three of them in an episode, it seemed like, for quite a while.
Yeah. Well, and I kept thinking about was what you said last time. I wanted that scene between Chaz and Zed, and I wanted it because last time you were like, oh, it's so great to have those scenes with them. No, not here.
But I thought that Zed, I don't know, she was her most, I don't know, it's weird. It's like this, like, I like Zed, I like the character of Zed, but she was the least, like, she didn't have one single out of character moment in this episode. I'll put it to you that way.
No, she was a utility character. She came in, she did what she does quickly, didn't really have much going on, and she was out. I actually like the actress. I like the character. I just think they were so focused on doing a Chaz story that they kind of let Zed be, okay, Zed, you're just kind of in this and then you're out. You know what I mean?
Which is fine with me, though, because when all is said and done, Zed has actually had more screen time than Chaz. And I find Chaz's backstory, like, at the time before we really knew what it was, to be more fascinating. And I wanted to know about that.
I still want to know more about it. I really enjoyed him and the family dynamic. And, I want to bring up a moment that was, I think, my favorite moment that is so different than the favorite moments that we usually would talk about. It was when Chaz came home after dying, sat down on the floor with his daughter and started showing her the pictures of the souls. And he starts telling her, because they didn't say that's what it is. He started saying, this is this woman and she was this age and this. And as soon as he did that, I was like, wow, that was the Constantine feels for me. I was like, wow, I loved that little moment.
Yeah, I was a little distracted by the directing choices of that with the feet and starting so low. But when they finally got to that particular moment, I agree with you. It was great.
Yeah, okay. Getting into the technicals, yeah, that's a little weird. But I did really enjoy, and that has to do with the writing more than anything, that might even be one of those throwaways, like, oh, this would be a neat little moment. You know what? It was a great little moment, and it's something that I'm going to remember. Like I said, watching the next episode, all that backstory about Chaz and that moment stayed with me the whole time.
Oh, absolutely. But as Chaz is driving to Brooklyn, and I guess, it's triggering his memory because this did destroy his family, he's going to see his daughter. He's always late. I was like, okay, we're getting into this. And it's like, oh, another drunken Constantine scene. Imagine that. And, Constantine does this weird thing to him. And I'm just like, okay. Okay. So I was like, oh, spell, origin of what happened to him. Okay. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Well, once again, it wasn't defined enough for us to know what was going on there. But I agree. I was like, okay, he's doing a spell. This is going to have ramifications. We're getting the backstory. But I didn't know it was the backstory at that point.
Oh, I did. Because it's like, okay, drunk Constantine doing magic is never good.
No, but I didn't know it was a flashback. I thought it was like, okay, now we're on the next story, and he's drunk again, and he's back to smoking. All right, and he's being an ass. Yeah, that all makes sense. But no, it was a flashback, and then Whitesnake came out. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was funny. Like the group, Lily and Axel, is an actual band.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Fun fact, they have a song. Like the people didn't even know. Like the production people, nobody knew that they had a song called 47 Ways to Die.
Really? Oh, that's awesome.
That was like one of the best like unintentional Easter eggs ever.
That's really good.
Chaz was always destined to be a hero because he was going to give up his life to help that girl out of the window,
Yep.
I thought that even though it was like just out of nowhere, like they were just it was like clumsy exposition. Chaz was always meant to be a hero kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
I thought that was really cool. So
I did too. You know what? This was a really great episode, but it had some technical issues.
Definitely clumsy, but it got the point across. It answered a lot of questions, even though we are always, it's only 13 episodes, so you're always going to be thirsty for more. They have to do what they can do with that. But I thought it was a great opening episode for Chaz, finally.
Well, and that's the other thing. I think we got a sliver of Chaz's story. I think that there is still opportunity for Chaz-centric episodes that show backstory that will flesh out so much more, So this is a win for me. This was a good one.
I felt like I was watching The Flash, though, because usually, like, with The Flash, we get Barry-centric flashbacks. And all the flashbacks to this point have been about Constantine. And then out of nowhere, they switch it up and give us Chaz.
Yeah.
So then we come out of that flashback, and Constantine and Zed are at Brooklyn, and they get to the hospital. And, they go into the room, and Chaz's wife just gives it to her.
And she hates John.
I would too. He destroyed their family. I mean, yes, Chaz is culpable in it too, but to have 47 souls weighing on you that way, I mean, you would want to do something to honor them. And you have a family, but it's like that push-pull. He was trying to make it work. She was the one not really giving an inch edgewise.
Yeah, well, she just didn't like what's going on. And it's understandable. I think in his mind, he thought, no, this is just my responsibility at this point, but I'm still the same guy. I'm still here. Like, he doesn't see it that way. Whereas, yeah, I understand why she can't stand John.
I kind of was like, Constantine, honestly, when he found out, he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to use this to my advantage, like nobody's business, because he's a manipulator. It's what he does. Finally, like, we get that Chaz definitely has some resentment. We saw that earlier in the season very briefly, but this episode definitely saw the resentment when he punched him out, walked away, and said, you've already ruined my family enough, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Good scene, too. Good call on that one.
Dude, we got to the bottom of what was going on instantly with the little evil fingerprint duster. It takes a little longer to get into it, but we were going full throttle with this episode.
Yeah, agreed. And I did like he had the good toys this time. I like the little eye that he was looking through.
It's a real thing that occultists use too.
I thought that was really cool.
I like the Achilles heel thing, obviously.
You know what? I'll tell you the thing this is my one thing I wasn't crazy about, and this is probably more technical. I thought the effect of the demon was so cheesy.
Oh, I was like, this is another thing where it made it feel like it was supernatural. It was basically a hellhound.
Yeah.
The thing that was sucking the souls from the sleeping.
Yeah.
I was just like, really? And they kind of did the same thing where you can't really see it. You need like these special glasses and all the stuff to see it. I was just like, oh, Constantine, you should have chose more carefully.
Yep. I definitely saw that.
Then, Chaz is like, hey, you got to help me. You got to promise me. And Constantine's like, you got to do as I say now. I know this is really personal, but, this is a precarious situation. So you got to promise me. And Chaz is, you're a dad.
Right.
You saw that coming.
Yeah.
We get another flashback, and it's like in the hospital. And I think this was really cute. And Renee and Geraldine are at his bedside. And then it like clicks. He's like, wait, I should be dead. But then we don't have time to process that because jump cut to Constantine, Zed, and Chaz going to the Army surplus store.
Yep.
And to meet Fennel.
Yeah, which was great. What a great intro. When they walk up and he pulls the gun on him and he's like, oh, you know this guy? That was great.
Yeah, that was crazy. And he's like, I'm not going to help John Constantine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's what they all say. But then they get like all the stuff they need. Like Constantine is stealing from them as they're walking into the store to ask for help. And I'm like, classic Constantine.
Yep.
Right. One of my favorite things about that. But then he gets them the help. And I like it because like he's setting up and Zed looks at him. She's like, I can get you some clean water. He's like, no, honey. This is water from the River Jordan. It acts as a conduit.
Right.
It reminded me of Constantine, the movie, where he puts his feet in the tub with the cat.
Oh, man, I haven't seen that one in a while. Yeah, I remember that.
That was one of the coolest scenes in the movie for me personally. It's kind of ingrained because he didn't speak a lot.
Right.
Just leave it at that. But then they get an ant, like he's doing the little summoning thing to channel, and the guy, the demon that's in possession, or as we come to know, Felix Faust. It's like, oh, is that you, Constantine? I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that was
He's like
great.
Oliver. Everything he does comes back to bite him in the butt. Every single thing.
Yep. That was really great, though, when that happened. And you know what? That effect was really good. The seance. Let's talk about the seance for a second. From a technical standpoint, we've seen this how many times? And you look at these movies now. Like, there's a lot of demon possession movies and that are on. And, I watch all this stuff. I actually thought that this was one of the better played seances. Like, just like last week when I said the effects of him, rising off the bed and all that were done so well, surprisingly, because I think it looked better than a lot of movies. I thought the seance, I loved how the flames, obviously it's gas under the flames, and that's what's making them bigger. But I thought the whole thing, it just had a great feel. And the culmination of that whole scene with him then saying, John Constantine, I was like, wow, this was a great scene. A real standout for me.
So I was like, oh, like we were about to hear. I was like, why aren't they just using Zed to summon her, to channel her spirit like she later ends up doing? I go, oh, that's why.
Right.
Because, naturally, Zed was telling her I'm a born psychic and, I can do all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, why are we going to this weird random guy when we have Zed?
Yeah, right.
But they answered my question in the episode. So that's bonus points.
Well, plus it gave us this character that it was a fun character. I was glad he was there
Until he burst into flames.
until he burst into flames.
Constantine, you were just a death trap.
Right. But it's Constantine. I don't care if he burst into flames. This guy could show back up.
Fiddle died in the comic books the same way. So I think that was a fun way to show a character in the comic book.
I definitely did too. And I don't think he's coming back, but it is Constantine.
Kind of leave the seance. And then he's like, hey, Chaz, we're one step closer. Kind of chill out. We got this book that contains the spell. It's only 5 people. So Zed takes the spell and she channels the workshop at the old rail yard.
Right.
And a man in a robe lunges at her with a knife. And I'm like, holy crap. She can get hurt in these visions now?
Yeah, that was cool. Which is kind of interesting when you think about what comes in the next episode.
Yeah.
Because it's that same area that she's entering, I guess.
It was weird. Like, so it's like the rising darkness. It's just making everything so turned up. It got real for me right then. I'm like, don't you ever hurt that again. And then after they go to the rail yard and the place appears abandoned and he's like, oh, this is a cheap concealment spell.
Yep.
I was like, wait, the rising darkness, and like he couldn't upgrade his concealment spell, or was he just lazy, arrogant? Like, I don't understand it, because he throws the thing into it and it's like, oh, okay, we're doing this, all right. Then like they see the robed man seated at the table, he greets them, and then he like reveals himself, and he's just such a cheeky little turd. And Constantine's like, oh, meet the apprentice to the greatest black magicians of his generation. I was like, Constantine, this guy has Chaz's daughter, so you can't be so dang condescending.
Well, you know what? I was reading about Faust, and it said that that's how they viewed him. Like, yeah, he was like an apprentice to Merlin. He wasn't anything until he started just going full on bad. So I love that was layered in here. It wasn't just, here's the big bad. It's like, yeah, there is that history. There is that bit in here.
And he's like, I got a deal for you. And I'm like, all right, here goes the quid pro quo. Let's see what you got. So we kind of got a 2-for-1 bad guy deal that I kind of like that. Like, I like discovering the creatures and the mythical artifacts of Constantine. It's kind of like Warehouse 13 at this point.
Yeah, another show I didn't watch except the pilot episode. And I thought it was cool. And I was like, yep, I'll go back and binge that one too.
So they make the deal about the Carabassin demon, and they shake on it, and they do this weird, crazy mage thing. And I'm like, oh, like we just got the whole dark magician part of Constantine. They kind of just completely glossed over it. I was like, wait, go back. Shake, make deals. He gives him the little thing to see him, and off they go. They go back to Red Hook to the warehouse, and no, they tell Chaz to go to the hospital. Because he's acting like a petulant little child at this point, but can't you blame him? And he does that, and then Zed and Constantine go to find this Carabassin demon.
Right, and that's when he uses the cattle prod that he stole earlier. Once again, I said I thought the effects were cheesy in this, but I loved the cattle prod. There was way too much setup of, you're just going to lay here, and at the last second, you're going to get away, and I'm going to do this, and I'm like, yeah, no, none of this is going to work.
What's that saying? Tell God your plans and listen to him laugh. That is Constantine's life in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
So apropos, quite honestly. Then we kind of see Chaz at the hospital with Renee. He returns the doll that they took to channel her with Fennel. And then we get the flashback to Chaz confronting, I use that term loosely, by the way. He's not very forceful with Constantine, never has been. Except for in this episode. The one where he confronts him at the bar and tells him that he was dead, and then Constantine realizes that the protection spell he cast worked. And this is the explanation about why Chaz can die so many times.
So now everybody understands, everybody knows. And I loved that. I loved that we were clued in on it. I really loved that whole concept. I loved the story. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, definitely. After they get rid of it, Constantine and Zed go to the hospital, and they see that the coma patients are coming in more and more and more, and they go, yo, we need you for backup, and Renee's like, I'm going with you, and she slaps Constantine, she gives it to him, and Constantine goes outside and sulks a little bit, even though he's had it coming. But that being the utility character is like, no, Renee, you need to be here for your daughter, and I'll stay with you, and I'm like, okay.
Right.
So off Chaz and Constantine go back to the rail yard, and Faust is like, yeah, it wasn't exactly the exact deal, so I'm gonna have you do something else for me, and Chaz is lit up like a Christmas tree about this.
Yeah, this was a great scene too. everything that happened here, and even like when Constantine came in and like was trying to stop it, I loved that whole thing.
Oh, definitely.
And I loved how Chaz there was no question. His plan, when it went into motion, it was like, oh, this is where it's all going. And Constantine said, like, okay, like he saw how well played out it was at that point.
We're not quite there yet, but oh yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Go ahead.
So after that, they kind of get into this argument and they leave outside the rail yard, but Chaz ain't having none of that, okay? He punches Constantine and then goes back in and says, hey, I'll trade you these 32 souls, including my own, for the life of my daughter. And Faust is like, you're immortal just like me, and all I see is a desperate man. And, of course, we cut to commercial after I'm going to show you what I can do. And so he comes back, slits his throat, and Faust is just kind of like waiting, like, oh, this foolish man. And then he wakes up, and Faust is like, oh, snaps, this is the real deal. And so he's like, okay, let's make this deal. And of course, Constantine wakes up just in time to kind of interrupt. But before that, we had a scene with Zed and Renee, and she was channeling Geraldine, and something happened to her. Her purse knocks over. Convenient plot is convenient. And she sees the note with the rail yard address on it, and she reaches down. So she shows up just in time to see Chaz's deal with Faust go up in flames, literally. So we had another flashback about Chaz being late for Geraldine's birthday, which made me think of the Flash. And, she's giving him an ultimatum, and then he goes to talk to Constantine.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, either way, whatever you decide, I'm with you. Either you want to go be with your family, or you want to use this as a good thing and help me fight alongside evil. And he chooses to fight evil. And
fight evil, yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'm not a parent. I'm not married. I don't know. Like, I know it's a burden, but I mean, honestly, I would have just chosen to be with my family.
I think that you're getting into ethics at this point. Where does that line draw? And for him, it's the greater good. He looks at it as his wife is protecting the daughter. He has a bigger responsibility.
See, but the thing with Constantine is that he's so murky and gross that it's okay for people around him to be murky. And I love Constantine, but he is murky and gross and dubious and duplicitous. And I feel like it's okay for people, just like when Sister Mary Margaret
Yeah, right.
shot him. I totally understand where she was coming from, because she thought he was going to hurt that bad. And quite possibly that's what he would have done. And I don't, so that, you know what I mean? In a world of Constantine, for somebody to be as good as Chaz, like, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Is the only thing about this whole storyline that just kind of doesn't really.
Once again, I think that they were trying to draw an ethical line for him and a viewpoint. It just might not have worked for you.
Yeah, I mean, in the comic books, he just seems kind of like a dopey schmope. Much like a lot of people in the actual Hellblazer, they're just very attracted to John's charisma and their lack. And in the show, Chaz just isn't like that.
Right, that's true.
That's the only difference. And I don't mind it. It's actually better character development for me personally. Back inside the rail house, we see that go down, and Renee's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I just watched him blow up.
Yeah, knowing and seeing are two different things, definitely.
I love how Constantine says to her, like, yeah, that's what he does. That's who he is. Like, that was a really cool way of expressing that, because he just laid it out on Front Street there, Like, yep, you've been sheltered. You've been closing your eyes to this the whole time. That's it. Now you know. Game over.
Chaz returned home, and Renee hugs him. She's relieved, and she gives Chaz that scrapbook that we like so much. And
yes.
He kind of apologizes. It's like they're making this way, roads towards amends. Like, she finally understands. She sees it. And I think that's the whole point of the story, is for us to be like, how could Chaz give up his family to go be with Constantine? And I think that was the whole point of the story, really.
Yes. Well, like I said, it was to lay out his ethical stance, and for us to get an idea of where he's coming from. Is it easy for us to swallow? No, because I think I would make very much the opposite choice. But I really do think that's what the whole purpose of this episode was to show us that.
Go back to the hospital. Zed wakes up, kind of, sort of, maybe. I'm not really sure if she was actually awake or if she was sleep talking. But he's holding her hand, and it's this cute little scene. Although it can be creepy depending on how old Zed really is. I think that's probably why they don't tell us.
Right.
he says, hey, you got to pace yourself. You can't be blowing your fuse out like this. And she says, this little girl's soul was at the mercy of a madman. I just wanted to do what I could to help.
Yeah.
And as she rolls over to sleep, she tells Zed that she saw his mother and that his mother's death wasn't his fault. And then she goes back to sleep and Constantine just lays in the bed like, damn you, Zed!
Right. Yeah, great.
That was a really kind of crazy way to end the episode. We should have left it on Chaz and kind of opened this next episode with that.
I think so too, or maybe not even opening the next one with that, but having that placed somewhere. It seemed like a scene out of place.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm gonna take a different stance now that I'm saying it out loud. Most shows would have ended with Chaz sitting on the floor with his daughter. I like that it did something different. Am I saying that this was the right choice? I don't know. But I do like that it did something different at the end.
But it annoys me because it goes nowhere in the next episode. That's the only reason I would say cut it.
Yeah, because it did leave a big question mark, and it was a good one. And then it's like, yeah, that didn't even happen. In fact, we're not even going to really show Zed in the next episode. Let's just move on.
Exactly. That was the only thing. Like at the time, I totally agree with you. But when I saw the next episode, I was just like, son of a gun, bait and switch again. They got me again. Talked about most of the Easter eggs as we kind of went along, but do you know what the bell was? Like they had the actual bell on his desk in the railroad from Breaking Bad or something like that.
No, I didn't catch that. Oh, Uncle Tio's bell.
Yeah, they had it.
Oh, now I really do have to go back and watch this episode.
The Adder Stones. I don't think they were actually ever used by that name, but the form definitely was. And like I said, they're real life objects that occultists use. They kind of look like Ouija board, the little things.
Like the little thing on a Ouija board. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was like an ancient Ouija board thing.
I want to encourage you guys to go totally check out Lillian Axe, the song 47 Ways to Die. I'm not really into that hard rock metal edge, but it's a pretty cool song.
Yeah, well, and just imagine that it's about Chaz.
So let's talk about the grade.
Okay. Am I going first or are you?
Yeah, I'll hang you out to dry first.
B+.
Okay.
Once again, I'm really enjoying it, but we're not hitting A status yet.
And it's the 10th episode.
Right.
I get like if it was just a regular episode of Constantine against itself, it's a B+. But like if you look at like the continuity and all the questions that have arisen and weren't kind of answered, and I don't know, it's just a B-, bordering on a C+. But the technical stuff was great. I got the story. Like I said, I didn't really find the dialogue very memorable.
Yeah, I'm going to completely agree. Now, I'm going to address something you just said. You go, here we are, the 10th episode, and it's really, we're still not hitting A status. Immediately, I thought of the show Parks and Recreation. Do you watch that?
Occasionally.
Okay. Everyone kept telling us to watch it. This is when it was in its second season. We went back and we started binging it in the first season. First season, we enjoyed, but I would say, if that was all we watched, I think the best it ever really hit was a B maybe, whereas I love the show. Once we hit second season, then it started hitting A's. So the reason I say that is maybe this show, as it's getting its footing, the best we could really hope for is a B+, and we should go, let's just really hope it gets to that next season, because that potential to hit A and really knock it out of the park is there.
Oh, definitely. And I have actually given one of these episodes an A, so.
And I might have given it a B, but Uncle Tio was in it, so it's B+.
I know how it is when you fangirl or fanboy. I believe me. If you listen to Flashpoint, you know.
Yep.
Scene of the night for you?
Scene of the night? Yeah, I already said it. Even though it's funny because it's not what you would normally think, but it's him sitting on the floor with his daughter. I mean, maybe it's because I'm a dad. Like the whole thing just was like, oh, I loved it. That was the scene. How about you?
For me, it's also one of the family scenes, but it's when he wakes up in the hospital and Geraldine goes, I was right here waiting for you, Daddy. And she gets in the bed with him.
Oh, yeah, that was a good scene.
Definitely. Like I said, they got a really great child actress. Line of the night?
I did. It's pretty lame, but it made me laugh out loud. Cattle prod? And then he goes, I've always wanted one. And you knew it was a plot device. I'm like, how long before this shows back up? There it is. So that was my line. How about you?
Constantine, Zed, meet Felix Faust, lifetime apprentice and second fiddle to the greatest black magicians of his generation. Felix responds, Second fiddle indeed, Constantine. The mages played the melody, but I wrote the concerto. They built their legends on my shoulders. I was like, such an arrogant little Twiggy you are.
And you know what? That dialogue is so comic book dialogue.
I think that's probably why it stuck out with me so much. Most memorable moment for you?
It's going to be the family stuff. End of the day, I don't know. There was actually more that's going to stay with me because I do think that just Faust in general, especially that first scene with Faust, is going to stay with me. The scene with the grenade is going to stay with me. This one, we kind of had things that I think throughout are going to be things that when I think back on the series, you know how you have memories of series and you kind of like, there are certain moments, like there's things about Lost that I will never forget when they first met Ethan. And I always think about when he went, hey, dude, he's not on the manifest. Those little moments, this one had a bunch of little moments that I think when I think about the show, I'll go, yeah, I remember that scene with the grenade. I remember the scene with his kid. And I just remember seeing Faust for the first time, and that might be the fanboy thing of It's Uncle Tio, and I was so excited to see him.
It was definitely a couple of mental images that stayed with me afterwards. The grenade scene was one, both for the coolness of it and the nitpicky factor of it. But yep. I think my favorite moment is Zed telling Constantine that she saw his mother and that her death wasn't his fault.
Once again, the scene that you kind of feel like maybe should have been left off.
Well, only in retrospect, though.
But you're right. That and the image of the camera pulling up and him laying on the bed with her with that look on his face. You're right. That's going to stay with me too. They better do something to bring that one back. They better resolve that.
Who is your MVP or character of the night?
You know what? It's Chaz.
Definitely.
It was about Chaz, and he did such a great job. There's just so much that happened with him. As much as I want to say it's Faust, it's Chaz.
I think that Faust kind of, if they hadn't been Mark Margolis, I don't know how I would have responded to it. Like I said, I know him from a lot of other stuff, and he always kind of just plays a jerk of a character.
But he was so perfect. He looked like Faust. He was Faust. That was exceptional casting.
Definitely. Which brings me to my actually most improved element, guest stars. Did anything shock or surprise you?
No.
For me, it was Zed getting hurt in her vision. Like I said, that was like, whoa.
I think I wasn't as married to the idea yet, so that didn't shock me. Maybe the fact that he chose Constantine over his family was a little shocking. We talk, Martha and I talk about the ethical stance of characters quite a bit, and like deontological ethics and things like that. So to me, I don't think I was as shocked as I found that to be an interesting thing that I like to kind of dig into. Yeah, I don't know if I was shocked by anything, really. Although, you know what? Maybe the most shocking thing was I saw your mom. It came out of nowhere. And I think if you had to ask John what the most shocking moment was, I think he'd say the same thing.
So, yeah, that just about does it for our discussion, other than shameless plugs and some self-promotion that we are so good at.
Yeah, let's get to that. My favorite part. Okay, well, you can follow me on Twitter at rsouthgate. You can follow our company. Martha tweets from at smgpods. And when we can, we live tweet stuff. We haven't been able to live tweet Constantine since the first few weeks.
But fun fact, I did. I live tweeted last week. From at Newcastle Crew, sure did. We got 2-3 new followers. Harold Perio actually favorited and responded to one of my tweets. I want to encourage you guys to come live tweet with the show at NBC_Constantine and with at Newcastle Crew. It's fun. The cast is really on it because, they're on this mission to save Constantine. So they're live tweeting every week. And, the finale's coming up.
And make sure you're using that hashtag #SaveConstantine.
You can follow me on Twitter at Lilith Hellfire. I live tweet Gotham and Empire from that account. But if you do the Flash, because we have a Flash podcast, a Flashpoint, just throwing that out there, Flashpoint_SMG. And then on Wednesdays, I tweet from QC_SMG pod for our Queen Consolidated podcast, which is dedicated to Arrows. So if you like any of the other DC shows, be sure to check that out. We also have a Before the Bat podcast, which is dedicated to Gotham.
Yep. We also have Fast Talkers. We have Fast Talkers, which is another Flash podcast. And we have the Flash Arrow Power Hour. And Lilith, get ready for this. This is breaking news. At the con this week, we picked up another Gotham podcast, another perspective. But you know what's interesting? People ask us about this, like, why do you have multiple Flash shows? Because the perspectives are completely different. Well, the Gotham one, I don't even know the name of it yet. I've been in talking to them this week. They do this. They've been doing it. They just don't have a home. And like after the next episode of Gotham, it gets turned on, and there we go.
Very awesome. Can't wait if they actually ever show up to any of the cons we do. I can't wait to meet them. Oh, this weekend, definitely come out if you're anywhere near Indianapolis. They have is it Indiana Wizard World, right?
Yes, yeah. Indianapolis Wizard World.
Yep, where Kelly, I, and her daughter are doing Geek My Kid panel there, and it hopefully will be up on YouTube or one of the various podcast things.
Yeah, we'll put it on here. It's going to be on, for sure, it'll be on Tour de Cons, that we're recording them. We're putting them on the Tour de Cons feed so you can listen to all the panels. We're also putting it on, like that one, we'll put on the Geek My Kids feed.
So, yeah, that about does it. Unless you get put into a psychic coma, be sure to come back here next week when we talk about episode 111.